I said we're having the WordPress Showdown between the two of us. Now, Paul, you haven't. When we first met here at Platform.sh about 4 years ago. Yeah, because you were actually still at Mizzou whenever I first met you.
Yep.
But we had a little bit of a connection around WordPress because I've been utilizing WordPress from a very simple level for I think around since 2007, 2006-ish is whenever I first started using it. But I've always been almost what I'd say maybe their primary demographic is the HostGator or GoDaddy type of deal where it's not, when I started, it wasn't necessarily one-click install, but it was like, okay, I go into the C's panel, I get my FTP, I upload the zip, I install it, but everything is in an environment where it's read write, and at a certain point it got nice because I could update WordPress with one click inside of WordPress. I'm the one that it's like I download crazy plugins and put them in, not even thinking about what's going to be the implications of it and all that kind of stuff. And then I got to Platform.sh, met you, and you started telling me like, hey, let me show you the better way. Let me show you let me show you the way that's going to be secure and not cause you problems in the future around it. And that's kind of, I think, what we're going to talk about today is like the options around those of it. So we put up on here, there's kind of three. We have what we internally, externally call, vanilla install, composer install, and then Bedrock. And first, let's start with the kind of overviewing each one of those, and then I think we can kind of maybe we'll riff a little bit on the merits of each and maybe which one we think we go from there. So what would you say, just a high level for our audience, is the difference between each one of those?
So vanilla is going to be what you would think of as traditional install. You're going to go download the tarball or the zip of the WordPress core files. You're going to unarchive those into a directory that has all your core files. And then particularly with us, because we're Git focused, you'd have to commit those files into the repository, push those up to us. So traditional structure, future updates, you're going to have a local instance running and then update the core files and then commit all those in, or maybe use the WP CLI to update those files, but then again, commit those back in. So that's kind of your traditional, what we refer to as vanilla. The next one, go ahead.
I was going to say, and for me, that's what I came in with, was this understanding. Like, I had never run into even have to think about packages. It was get WordPress up and running, and then at that point, all the installs, all the updates, anything I was doing that through WordPress's backend. Even for me, like if I was like, I'd install a theme, if I want to make changes to the theme, sometimes I would do it in the file and then, commit, push, upload, in my case, FTP, the file up there. But most of the time, once it gave the access, even through the backend, to go in and view HTML and CSS, I would just do it through the backend access that you get on WordPress itself. But that's what vanilla gets you to some extent. I mean, your ultimate where you're hosting and how you host it will depend on that. Like with us, we do read only. So unless you're setting it up as a full thing as a mount and everything is read write, which do not do that. Don't do that. From a guy who's had 3 WordPress sites hacked in the past, don't do that.
Don't do that. So let me give you a history of me too, right? So I have been working in WordPress since 2007. My initial experience with WordPress was I was given the task to build out the University of Missouri News Bureau's news site. They needed something where they could publish news. And so back then, same as you, I had, God, I shouldn't admit. So the server was under my desk.
Yeah, we've all been there, Paul.
We've all been there,
this is a safe place. This is a safe place.
So I worked to build that out through, and this was back to version 2.7, maybe 2.9. Custom post types had just been released.
Okay.
So using custom post types and doing that. So I've been through that experience of you go into production and run the update. And this was long before WordPress had built in the abilities to pre-catch PHP errors and prevent that white screen of death. So back then it was constant white screens of death because you'd have a plugin or a theme that conflicted with it. So very much a traditional vanilla flavor. So I've got a decade or more of experience in that traditional vanilla version. So absolutely could commiserate and empathize with those pains that you had gone through.
You remind me of stuff. Like, yeah, we need to go on. We'll come back to this because I'm just like, oh my gosh, I feel like we could rip vanilla version a new one on this, but we'll continue on to the other ones.
So the next one is a composer based, as you mentioned, packages. And the idea, if you're not familiar with Composer, it's a package manager. If you've used npm or pip or one of those other ones in other languages, same thing, right? We're going to define a collection of dependencies that we need for our project, and then using that package manager, install those dependencies. So WordPress has been around since 2004. And has, to its credit, is exceptionally backwards compatible. I remember being given a 2.4, 2.5 version WordPress and was able to upgrade it to the 3 or 4 dot whatever version at the time with zero. And I wouldn't say zero, but it was like maybe 1 or 2 issues that had to be resolved. Very minor.
Yeah.
So very backwards compatible. The flip side of that, though, is that it has not advanced along with the rest of the world in terms of hosting and technology. And most of the rest of the world has moved on to package managers. So Composer allows us to, with WordPress, redefine how we look at the WordPress site and think of it less as WordPress with some themes and plugins, and instead think of the project with a bunch of dependencies, where WordPress is just a dependency. The plugin that you want to use inside the site is just a dependency. The theme is just a dependency. And that Composer JSON, that package, that list of packages is really what defines or creates our project. So that the other big advantage there is that it lends itself better to cloud hosting, because we need to build and replicate that project at any point. So as long as we have that Composer file, we should be able to replicate all those dependencies.
It also lends to a better situation where multiple developers are working on the project.
Oh, absolutely.
As well. Yeah. Because, okay, cool. So Composer packages basically interchangeable on that. Basically, would be like saying a package based, but Composer is what's managing on there.
Correct.
Are there other that'd be a rabbit trail. I was about to say, like, are there other package managers for PHP? But I imagine there are. But Composer's the one.
I mean, Composer won out. I don't even remember the history if there were other ones. But I'm assuming if there were, Composer won out. And to be honest, I delve into Python every once in a while. I do some Go. I do some JavaScript. It's kind of nice only having one.
Yeah. I've seen so many situations where it's like, especially like npm, npx, like something that kind of quick of a change of like all of a sudden you don't catch that you used one over the other or whatever to manage it. Python is notoriously a pain because it's like pip, but pip 3. And
Anaconda.
I
had a big list once because I was ripping to my boss on it. I was like, why are there so many?
So I agree with that. Nice, because Composer just you don't have to think of like, well, and okay, most of them end up having the same packages, but then in some cases you can run into issues with that. So Composer based with WordPress, one to run them all. It makes it going on there. Okay, now tell me about Bedrock, because of all of these, Bedrock is the one that I'm least familiar with.
Oh, okay. So I'm going to use the word proprietary. It's open source, but it's from a company called Roots. It is their attempt to modernize WordPress even farther and try to make it a true 12-factor app.
Okay.
Are you familiar with 12-factor?
No. It sounds like a diet program. So...
So it's a 12.
Try Bedrock. You will lose 5 pounds in 2 weeks.
Yeah. So it's a philosophy in software engineering to try to build. It's the best practices for building like maintainable, scalable, cloud-ready applications.
Okay.
I won't go through all 12, but the idea is that your code base is tracked in a proper version control system.
Okay.
Where you've got full auditing and it's immutable, right? So any specific commit is immutable. You can't change it. If you change something, well, that becomes the next commit, right?
Okay.
You define all of your different dependencies explicitly, like we were talking about with Composer. So all of your dependencies are explicitly defined, which then allows you to just audit them. You avoid any system-wide dependencies. They all have to be part of that project.
Okay.
The other big piece is then all the configuration for your application should actually come from the environment, from environment variables or files on the environment that you can read in. And you've written the code such that it doesn't care which environment it's in, because it's going to get all the information it needs from the environment.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm tracking on this a little bit of the difference. So I'm probably going to re-explain this wrong. So if Composer is very much like you said, you're abstracting WordPress from being the central piece to being a piece of the project in a sense.
Right.
So therefore, everything is package based. WordPress is package based. The plugins are package based. The themes are package based. This takes it another step further to then saying we're abstracting even that to environmental variables for that as well. So it makes it even more flexible, able to move and go to different places.
Right. Yeah. The goal, if you've, so GitOps, which is another piece we won't get too much into. GitOps is the same philosophy, right? They very, very much go hand in hand together. But the idea is that you should be able to take this project, this repository, and put it in any environment and replicate the entire thing exactly the same, no matter where you are. You shouldn't have to change any code to be on staging or to be in development or be on production. That code should be able to move anywhere. With GitOps, that includes the environment as well. You should be able to replicate the environment at any point. Doesn't matter, staging, production, etc., without having to change any code.
Okay. So let's circle back on a couple of these things. So of course, so my world is very much Upson related in this stuff. And what's interesting to me is the Bedrock version, what you're saying is great, but I think with Upson, if you're doing Composer on Upson, you kind of get that with it too already.
So you can you can make a Composer-based WordPress a 12-factor app. You don't need Bedrock to do that. They are a boilerplate system to do that for you. They kind of build all that in for you. So when you create a Bedrock project, it's already got support for environment files to pull all that data from it.
Okay.
They take care of some of the other pieces that the Composer piece doesn't to help you get to that 12-factor app much quicker.
Okay.
Kind of just a framework, it's a boilerplate. It's a framework to get you to that stage much faster.
That makes sense. I think I saw somewhere you had mentioned that it's like you compared it to Laravel for me, or Symfony in that sense of like kind of a it almost, from what I'm hearing, no, because that'd be a bad analogy. I was gonna be, it's like it almost makes WordPress a framework. It does not. That is a horrible analogy. It's
no, it just gets you. It gets you that step. Like here's a good example. So with WordPress, you have the possibility to have must-use plugins. Those plugins are always loaded. You can't disable them, etc. The way must-use plugins are handled in WordPress is that the file for the plugin has to be in the must-use directory.
Oh, fun. Yeah.
So if you're installing a dependency, well, that dependency is going to be installed into a directory.
Yeah.
So we could put the directory in the files for that must-use plugin into the must-use plugin directory. But WordPress isn't going to know about it. So then you have to build yourself some system to expose that individual file into that root directory.
Okay.
Bedrock handles that for you. They go ahead and they automatically, I don't remember specifically how they do it. They have one file that goes in there. That file then reads all the directories and pulls in all the files for you.
Okay.
Again, kind of getting you that extra step without you having to do it.
This all makes sense. Okay, so it's showdown time, because we got 15 minutes on this. I think we need to do a little pro and con for each one.
Sure.
And then maybe we raise the hand of the victor at the end of this. I don't know. I'm just making this stuff as we go, so it's good times on this. So let's think some pros and cons on just vanilla. Vanilla. Here's what I'll say is it's probably the most common way, right? So you've got a lot of other people that will be able to pro of it is a lot of other people will be able to understand the pain you're going through.
Well, understand the pain and just be familiar with the file structure when they see it.
Yeah.
Like, so less people are going to be familiar with either Composer or Bedrock. So if a dev that you've maybe contracted or hired in to assist you comes into a Bedrock scenario and they've never experienced Bedrock or maybe not familiar with Composer, they may not understand what's going on. So the advantage there with traditional is the number of people who are familiar with that structure is much greater.
I would say in a good and bad way, like you said, is backward compatibility and I would say in some ways too, maybe flexibility of where production is hosted. It doesn't necessarily help with your development workflow, but from a production standpoint, yeah, even if you are, and that's a backward compatible deal. So if you're just like, oh, I have a server under my desk, you could still do that with vanilla to this day.
Yep.
With very, running a server on your desk has, if you're doing that, you already have some level of technical skill to be able to have that going on. But ultimately, from there, it's like, okay, well, I can do this. But the problem is, the second you start involving other developers in that case, right?
Yeah, well, so I'll contrast that with what you could do in Composer. So let's say, again, we're thinking in terms of having the core files in a repository because we have to have that to run with us. Again, if you're somewhere else, that doesn't have to happen, but with us. So if I want to check out that repository and I want to test a new version of WordPress, well, I can kick off, DDev or Lando or something locally, update the files, but I've got to commit those into the repository to get them up to us. And let's say I decide later, it's not going to work. Like we need to roll back. Undoing that commit is possible, but more complicated.
Yeah.
If you do it, if you're using Composer, well, you've just changed a version number in your package definition. So if you want to go back, you don't have to even reverse the commit. You could just change the version number and pin it back to that specific one.
How does that work though because I know going up in certain versions with WordPress, it changes your database settings too though. So how does that play in with the Composer and Bedrock side of things?
Well, so in your local instance, that would have only changed your local database.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, if you did this on production, well, then you should have taken a backup of the database before you did anything on production. But you're right?
What's that word? Back up.
That's another great advantage of using something like us, right? Is you don't actually do anything on production. You go do it in a staging branch or a dev branch, a dev environment, I should say, where it's completely isolated, right? It has nothing. It's not touching back to production anymore.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work or anything like that, you don't have to worry. You kill it and try again and just go for it at that point. And I very much have experienced that many a times as I said, wannabe developer. And my way of developing is, does it work? No, try again. Does it work? No, try it again. It worked. Okay, how well will it work? Did I break it yet? Okay, I broke it. Cool.
Right.
Now how do I fix that? So that makes sense in this case. Okay, so some merits to vanilla. I would say the other thing that's probably nice with vanilla is it's the WordPress open source version that you're not changing any of the core features, anything like that.
Yeah, so with either Composer or Bedrock, you are going to be relying on a third party. So for Composer, John Block has graciously been supporting this Composer-fied version of WordPress for a decade. I don't even know how long. It's at least a decade.
Yeah.
And again, very graciously, he's got it all automated. I don't think it takes him a lot of effort anymore to do it, but continues to support that. But if for something were to happen to him or he were to change his mind, we'd kind of be out of luck until somebody forked it or took it over or in some way brought up a secondary. So,
Yeah. And even from me, like my little digging into that initially, most of what he's doing is just rearranging files and where they're pointed to. That's it. It's not like anything changing in the core functionality of WordPress. It's just in the almost the variables of the core saying I'm pointing to these files, to directories to do these things, and this is sitting here. It's like, okay, well, I changed where it points to in the core, and then the files get rearranged because it makes it work better with Composer from there.
Right, yeah. So he's got a Composer metadata file that exposes this package back to Composer, so Composer knows what it is, and then he's got an installer collection, a Composer plugin to do the install, to take those core files and then put them in a specific directory.
Okay.
So it wouldn't be astronomical if someone had to replicate this, or if you had to come up with a secondary solution in the interim, but you are relying on that third party. Same thing for Bedrock. Bedrock uses their own version of the core files, a Composer package of the core files. So you're relying on them to provide that package.
Okay.
He packages them, so your plugins, your themes, if you're using either Composer or you're using Bedrock, you're relying on WP packages, which I'm now blanking on the company that supports that.
Yeah.
It's on the page. I just had to bring up the page and look.
Yeah.
But we're relying on that company and their good graces to provide those packages. Now, again, they're doing something similar where they're reading the public repository and then putting Composer metadata in front of that. I believe they're running a very large instance of Satis. Satis allows you to have your own Composer repository of packages. So I believe that's what they're doing, reading those public data or those public files, and then just adding Composer metadata and exposing that back out to Composer.
Perfect. Outlandish.
Outlandish, thank you. It was on the back of my tip of the tongue.
I was like, you're talking, I can Google real quick. Go from there. Okay, so vanilla, let's talk Composer. I feel like we brought up some of the pros and cons on this already, but going Composer, one, I think allows, like you said, repeatability.
Right.
Like
repeatability, replication of it. You really don't need, I mean, if you look at like our template for a Composer-based WordPress, there's not a whole lot there. It's really all just configuration. It's the Composer file that defines the dependencies, the configuration for the infrastructure. I think there's an environment file to define some of these environment variables, or mapping what we expose inside the environment to what WordPress is expecting. But there's not a lot else there. So it's very easy to replicate that. Another really interesting piece with Composer is because you've defined all of those dependencies in a single location, you can audit your sites a little easier.
Oh my gosh.
Right. Like, so if you wanted to say, you know, I've got 5 WordPress sites and I want to know what plugins they're all running. Well, you normally, if you were running like vanilla, you'd have to go in maybe with the CLI and say, give me my plugin list, or maybe look in the plugins directory, but then maybe that wouldn't tell you everything.
Oh my, you're like bringing up like so much like baggage now of me, like, oh, even in the fact of like, oh, I want to spin up a new WordPress site. I like all the plugins I have over here, right? And then to go over here, it's like, oh, I got to go find that plugin and install it. I got to go find that plugin and install it. I got to go find that plugin and install it. What you're saying in this like is amazing, because I'm able to just grab that list, put it over there, good to go.
Yeah. Same thing if you're like an agency and you want to have kind of a core install, right? Where every new site is the same. Well, you can use Composer, and then all you really need is that Composer JSON to start from, to have everybody have that exact same collection of plugins, themes, must use, etc.
Yeah, because this makes even more sense on your side, like coming from the university standpoint. Because how many WordPress, like, we're not talking multi-site. You were running individual WordPress sites. How many was it? Like 150?
Like 200? Like we were responsible for like 200 sites.
That tells you how big the number is. That whenever I go into like a higher range of voice, I'm like 250.
Yeah,
like
it's wow, a lot. Yeah, and so, and I'll be honest, I fought because I came from a decade or more of that vanilla traditional thing, and what's this composer trying to do? I fought it for a long time, for a good 6 months when we started moving into cloud infrastructure, and then finally realized there just wasn't going to be a way that I could accomplish all the goals I needed with that more vanilla kind of setup, that I really had to move into Composer.
Yeah.
Because it really does make management of a fleet of sites much, much easier.
Yeah, I can see that. Like you just mentioned that. I hadn't even thought about that fact, because most of the time I'm very much one, and then go on to the next, but I hadn't even thought about that. Okay, so that's Composer. I mean, is there any other major problems, pros to being able to use Composer in that case? I mean,
one other nice thing is you don't have to have an instance of WordPress running to perform the dependency updates. So I can update core, the plugins, the themes. I can update them to the next version without necessarily having to have an instance running. So if I wanted to, I could run an update, like in a GitHub action, as long as I've got PHP using the same version with the same extensions and all that, so I don't run into any Composer issues with PHP. But other than that, I wouldn't have to have a database. I wouldn't have to have any of that in order to at least run the update. Now, I couldn't test the updates because like you mentioned, like the database has got to be updated. Sometimes the plugins or themes will run some update sequence. So you still have to have that, but at least in just updating, you don't have to have a full setup available.
Okay, so let me ask that. We'll dive into that just a little bit more, and we've got time. We've got time for this. How does that work then with like Upson Platform.sh? Because you're able to, in a staging, in essence, fully build, run, test on that. And I know is that then the update happening in the build process whenever you push it to production?
So there's a couple of ways. Sorry,
because let's get clear on this really quickly. I probably need to clarify on that side of it. Your database is like, while we replicate the database into a staging environment, you're going to run the updates all there, build the process, all that, and it's going to update that database. But whenever we push into production, we don't push the database into production. So how does that little fun switch work there, to where now what you've done here to update this database, make sure that it updates the production database so it all works properly there?
So one thing you'll notice in our Composer templates, and I'm pointing to those because we've tried to help customers get to a good place with these different flavors. So if you've ever looked at it, you'll notice that when you hit the deploy stage, and we utilize what we call a deploy hook. There are a couple of extra commands in there. One is to update the database. So if core was updated from the code aspect, the dependency aspect, then we're going to update the database on production. Or whatever environment you're deploying into. Same thing with the cron jobs. So it's going to run any past cron jobs to update those. So if those plugins, if those themes, the core has updated, that should catch all those update pieces for the database.
Okay. From experience, timing wise on that, because I know a lot of times whenever I was updating WordPress, like your downtime could be 5 minutes, 10 minutes, sometimes running through all that. What's the comparison with doing it this way with Composer?
Well, the Composer is going to pull in the code first. So technically, it's not going to be any downtime other than what you would normally experience in deploying a new environment, which is pretty minimal because we hold requests. So me being platform, right? Like, so when you're deploying an environment, we hold those requests temporarily while a new environment comes up, and then once it's up and available, release it. So most of all that has already happened. There's really not going to be any downtime.
Awesome. Perfect. That's just curious on that. All right. So vanilla, Composer. Last is Bedrock. Major pro on this, it seems like, if you want to be running 12-factor.
Yeah, if you want to be running 12-factor, this is going to be the way to get you really quick into there. It's got that built-in support for must-use plugins, so you don't have to come up with your own methodology to support those. It automatically bundles in bcrypt password hashing.
Okay.
Which is a much better way to hash your passwords. Default in WordPress, I think, is like a double MD5, and we know MD5 is not really secure anymore.
Okay.
Now, that's not to say you can't use that bcrypt password hashing with Composer or even traditional. You could add that support in. It's just
but you're adding it. It seems like Bedrock takes everything you get with Bedrock, you could do with Composer.
Right.
It's just extra steps involved. Bedrock, done for you.
Now, the big piece that I'll add for Bedrock is that with a Composer-based WordPress project, there is no official support for doing that, right? You can't really go to WordPress and ask for help because that's not supported. There's no official like WordPress Composer. So you're kind of on your own with Bedrock because it's their product and they have a whole ecosystem of products that kind of build around this. There is support. So if you get stuck trying to use Bedrock, they've got a forum. I think they have Discord. They have a couple of different channels that you can use to get some support.
Does it have do they have I imagine some kind of a paid level thing with it where you're guaranteed?
So.
Okay. I don't know. I'm just curious. I didn't know if I was going to make the analogy of, so it's like the Red Hat version but it's not in that case. So we'll go from there.
They have paid upgrades. They offer some services, some like SaaS type services. I believe they have some pro versions of the different products that they offer. But this is kind of the base piece to build on top. The other big piece is they really like Laravel. So if you're already familiar with Laravel and then you're moving into WordPress, this is going to be a very nice transition.
I want to talk to the developer that's in that situation, though. Like, I don't know. Like, it's...
you never know. I mean, you never know.
Maybe it's probably going to be more of those like, hey, we're doing a whole bunch of stuff with Laravel for your main application, right? And then, well, we need to run a site over here on WordPress, and we'll do it that way. That's probably more of the... but the person that I was like thinking in my head's like, no, I'm purely moving. I'm done with Laravel. I'm going straight into WordPress now. Like that's...
It would be a change, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm done with that back end lifestyle. I want to go do WordPress. I can see that happening. Awesome. Okay, so do we want to declare a winner in this showdown? I don't know. Like, I feel like I should have like ding ding ding. Like I said, I meant to download my little deal, but there.
I hesitate to say there's a winner because it's really just three different tools, three different strategies, depending on what you're trying to do, right?
Because you're too nice.
I mean, think of them as like drills, right? You've got a hammer drill, you got an impact driver, you got just a regular screwdriver drill, right? Like,
okay,
which one you use really depends on what you're trying to do.
True.
I mean, you can use an impact driver when you need a hammer drill, and you can probably use a hammer drill when you need. I mean, but they don't work as well. They're really built for specific scenarios, and this is kind of the same thing.
See, I'm old school. You just take the drill and then you hit on top of it with a rubber mallet if you need to do on that too. So that's probably why I'm like I'm leaning Composer for me personally, is where I kind of end up going most of the time. Mainly,
I mean, that's the one that when I was at the university we used because universities are weird. We have a lot of weird regulations. And so one of the disadvantages of Bedrock is it is proprietary, right? It's roots.
Yeah.
It is opinionated. It has the specific ways you need to do things. And so if those ways, those opinions don't mesh well with what you need to do, you're going to end up fighting it more. And so then you could move back to Composer because all the advantages of Composer and Bedrock, all the Composer-based advantages are in Bedrock. Can I just say that? Yes.
Yeah. Something like that.
And a lot of what Bedrock adds, you can do on your own if you need to, minus the support. So there's no reason you can't do Composer and get everything that Bedrock offers minus support.
It's more work. Yeah, I think the reason for me, particularly why I think I probably lean more Composer too, is it's still my brain still thinks, themes, plugins,
right.
kind of deal. So all I'm doing is one extra step of abstracting out where that happens. So rather than that all happening inside of the admin panel back dashboard for WordPress, I'm doing that in my code and doing it there. And I'm, using Composer to do my little install and make it happen and then run it from there. So for me, it's there. Whereas you mentioning Bedrock, my brain's going like, I got other things I got to learn then. Like I got to more things I have to configure and keep in place. But like you said, in those cases, that also does increase the replication capabilities of it and the ability of not having that conversation. Well, it worked on my computer. It worked on my desktop, whatever. Why isn't it working in production? Well, when you have those everything involved with it, you have more coverage of that happening and less of the, I don't know why it's not working in production now because it was working here. The more you cover all the variables, the less you have for problems coming across there. So, yeah. I checked comments while we're chit-chatting there. We don't have any direct questions today, so I don't know if we want to roll into any questions around this, but it is what it is. Unless I don't know if we do. I forgot to bring up the YouTube live stream. Maybe it's over there. There's some questions going on with that. If so, I have no idea. I could probably look down here and see if our producers have anything they're dropping in there, but I'm guessing not for today. So I've asked all my questions as we went through this. I don't know. Let me ask a final question to you. So,
sure.
With this, we have like vanilla, we have Composer, we have Bedrock. Do you feel there's anything in the future for another one to come onto the scene? Is there anything here that it's like, oh, that's great, all those, but they're missing this piece of it?
That's a good question. And given the current uncertainty of WordPress and its future, it's really hard to make that guess.
And this might be out there. If I was to guess on it, because I've seen this happening more with other CMSs as well, is the abstraction of front end to back end would be interesting for me to see somebody going down that route of making that, because it's possible, right? Ish.
So yeah, a couple of different ways, right? There has been for some time now, like GraphQL is getting baked into core soon. That's currently a plugin, and they hired, again, I'm forgetting names today, the gentleman that has always been the force behind the WordPress GraphQL plugin was hired by Automatic directly to work that into core. So soon, in addition to a REST API, you're going to have a GraphQL API that you can access. So for many years, there has been a push to do headless WordPress with a front end. Headless has kind of become that commodity stage, right? Where most everybody that needs a headless system has already migrated to a headless system.
Yeah.
If you don't already know you need one, you probably don't. There is more movement for WordPress to do like full site editing, like a Wix or a Squarespace. A lot of work in what was known as Gutenberg in that area to further kind of build that separation between the front end and the back end, where you can almost build a site with just the editor in WordPress without having to change any code. Okay. I would guess we're probably going to see that extend farther and farther and make more and more improvements.
Which is interesting because it feels like, as I'm seeing more about, Wix and the other ones are in there, they're starting to roll out more stuff for developers to be able to edit. And it's interesting. It's like the markets are realizing, like, on both sides of that, it's like, oh, well, we need to make this, and that's always been WordPress, is just accessible to people who don't have any development experience to be able to set up a website. Is WordPress kind of main overarching goal with things. And on the flip side, now you got Wix, who did that in essence, and now they're saying, but we want to make sure that there's ability for developers to do stuff in here now too. So opening up the markets on both sides of that.
And one of the criticisms of Wix has been, I'm trying to say tactfully, right, has been, if you see a Wix site, you probably know it's a Wix site.
Yep.
Right? Because I think about this in terms of like cycles, right? Like, front page 98 in Dreamweaver back in the late 90s was revolutionizing the web because now you didn't have to be a programmer to build those sites. You could use a what you see is what you get kind of system to build it out. But we discovered that that was good for 80%, but there was a 20% market where you just couldn't. You still needed to get in there. And I think we're seeing essentially the same thing happen where, okay, you can build these very elaborate front ends to let you build sites without knowing code. And it'll get you 80% of what you want, but that last 20% is still going to require customization and changes. And so if you're okay with where you get with 80%, good, right? But if you're a business and you're like, no, we've got to have that last 20%, well, then you need those developers still to come in and make those changes. So I think that's what Wix and Squarespace and those are seeing now is that they've got all the 80%, the people who are okay with the 80%, they've got them. And now they're starting to run into those that are like, well, but we still want these last little few pieces that are going to require some either back end or some additional changes that you can't do in their interface.
Yeah. And I think that's it's interesting. Everybody gets their 80% going to start off with, and everybody has that last 20% that it's like, oh, crap, we got to do this. I always say it's easy to get to 80%.
Right.
80% takes a year or two to get to functionality.
To get to 80% takes 20% of your time.
Yeah.
Right.
And then 100% on that statement. We're going to just start talking in percentages here. Well, speaking of percentages, we're out of almost 100% of our time for today's live stream. So I want to thank everybody for joining us today live. Yeah. If anybody it wants to share this, well, this will be available later on. And here's a little plug that you might want to send to them is, today on our show, we had Paul with us, and it was awesome to talk about WordPress, the different versions that were involved with that, whether it's vanilla, Composer, Bedrock. The answer at the end of the day of the showdown is maybe up to you to determine which is the best. But at the end of the day, we have our opinions for sure, which is the best. And if you want to watch to find out, there you go. But just thank you to everybody who joined us for today. And as always, thank you to Upson for being our sponsor and employer for allowing us to put on this live stream for everyone. Hopefully it's helpful for everyone. Thank you to Celeste and Pablo, who's behind the scenes moving everything with that. And thank you to everybody who just makes this a reality every time we have it in place. And until next time, what?
Oh, I'm going to do a plug.
Oh, Paul's going to do a plug. Oh, yes, Paul's got a plug. Sorry.
Yeah, in 2 weeks, I'll be doing another webinar on how to manage a fleet of sites, a fleet of WordPress sites. Okay. Going back to my history and my years of having to do that and kind of the trials and tribulations and right there. And things that I discovered that helped actually have to manage hundreds of sites. So if you're interested, if you're an agency or if you're an organization, you've got a bunch of these sites and this is something you need to do, I'm going to be talking through, all the different ways you can do that.
So make sure to sign up and tune back in for that. You can find, I think, links to that on our LinkedIn page, but also on Platform.sh and everything around there.
I know it's also being advertised on Reddit because I keep having friends send me screenshots of, hey, your face showed up on my Reddit homepage. What's going on?
There you go. So just go on Reddit and you'll find it eventually. I imagine that's somewhere there. Well, with that being said, like I said, make sure to check out upson.com if you haven't. There's a free trial available there. And then also we have a promotion that's always available that if you're just wanting to try out a project, these are taken care of, and all you have to pay for is the resources, is how that works. So makes it very affordable to try things out and check it out for the first time. There's also Platform.sh, where both are kind of the same technologies, but if you're really interested in WordPress, we've got templates already built out on Platform.sh for you to launch on there and try it there as well. For all three. There you go. So
Bedrock.
Yeah, you go check that out there as well. And also, we didn't mention it much today, but check out blackfire.io. that is also, as this is all happening, being able to observe like how well is the changes that I'm making to my site actually improving on the performance, and what changes could I make to my site to make it improved and work better in the future.
What's slowing me down? What is taking so long? What's the bottleneck?
Perfect. All of these things are great things that we hope will bring value to you. Well, with that being said, I just want to say once again, thanks for joining us, and keep coding.
Pleasure.
And until next time, take care, everyone.